So Bitcoin hit up above 80.2K. Yes, that stopped out my trades. All three of them hit my stop loss. I took about a 10% loss across those positions today. Those in my group know already, and it's not ideal. But that is exactly why we use stop losses in this game. Controlled loss is greater than a liquidation. And right now, even after that big move, my bigger Bitcoin thesis has not changed, and we still have plenty in our spot bags to compensate. Before we go any farther, remember, none of this is financial advice for educational and informational purposes only. I'm just the dad sharing my own trades, DeFi positions, and plays to each of you out there in YouTube land. So here is my main thesis. I still see Bitcoin being in a recovery bounce inside a larger bear market structure. This does not mean that Bitcoin cannot squeeze higher. It absolutely can, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. And that's why I respect my stops. But when I zoom out, Bitcoin is pressing just slightly above the bull market support band. And if we don't maintain the bull market support band, I expect Bitcoin to hit lower levels. So obviously, we're not overly bullish. We are macro bearish because we still believe we're in a bear market. But to me, the bull market support band, our last pivot high at 79K 600, to me, this is a major decision zone. If we can't stay above that last pivot high, which we hit on April 22nd, Bitcoin could go much lower. This is my base case personally. I don't believe it's a clean break, obviously, and do not take victory laps yet. A bounce into resistance is still a bounce into resistance until it proves otherwise. Now, if you stay around till a little bit later in the video, I'll tell you what I'm looking at if Bitcoin were to get strength, maintain strength above the pivot high. Now, let's look at some of my Bitcoin levels. So we're going to zoom in on the hourly chart. As you can see here, we whipped through the pivot high a few hours ago. The main rejection zone I'm watching is 79,600 and this rejection point at 80.3K. If we get back up to 80.3K or higher, I am going to add to the shorts that I just took, Bitcoin, Ethereum. We've been looking a little bit at Tau, but again, those were stopped out. But please understand, even though we're looking at this tight range in between 79.5 and 80.3, wick is not acceptance below, so we could still go higher. But for me, if we can't get back up above 80.3 and continue on, or test 79.5 and then regain support there, I'm going to start watching for bit build even more weakness. So the bigger level for me is actually 79.5, because if Bitcoin loses that, I think the downside can open wide and open back up. And after that, what are we looking at? Our line in the sand at 76.6, 74.8, and then all the way down here at 66.4K. And then, of course, our lows at 59.474. Look, there's a lot of support levels that Bitcoin has that we can look at, but I do believe that Bitcoin is going to see lower prices this year. So I'll be positioning myself to accumulate more at a much better price. So honestly, to me, the map is super, super simple. We need to watch our tariff capitulation lows at 74K, our line in the sand at 76K, the last pivot high, which we have to maintain support above at 79.5, and then, of course, our rejection point from this earlier today around 80.3 to 80.5K. So again, resistance 80K to 80.3, early warning signs once we get below that 79.5. And after that, I don't know, you better watch carefully because that could be all she wrote for a little bit of time. Not forever, of course. Now, these are some of the reasons why I'm still defensive. And we could take a look at ETH, which, pumped up pretty much above 2,400 or almost to 2,400. And it still looks like this is a bounce and momentum is slowly starting to go away. Now, also right now, if you take a look at Bitcoin dominance, we are back at 61.2%, above 61%. That matters because Bitcoin dominance, when it rises, it usually means all the liquidity in the market is doing what? Moving right back to Bitcoin. When this happens, your altcoins, they're going to be struggling. And remember, Bitcoin dominance can rise while the whole market is going down. This means that Bitcoin can drift lower slowly while Ethereum and aughts bleed much harder than Bitcoin. Most crypto investors learn that the hard way the first cycle or two. So to me, this looks like a market where liquidity is hiding in Bitcoin and stables, not aggressively rotating into the rest of crypto. Not yet. Well, actually, what would change my mind with this thesis? Well, having a thesis does not mean being stubborn. My thesis is still bearish until the chart proves otherwise. But I do have invalidation levels, and I've already gone over those. My invalidation for any of these shorts is Bitcoin completely getting back above 80.3. If that happens and we show strength there for at least the time being, I'm going to have to respect that. That would tell me that this short squeeze is not over yet. And if that happens, I have to reassess my strategies, my positions, possibly no ego, no revenge trading, no pretending the market owes me jack. Until Bitcoin proves acceptance above 80.3K, I still view this as a rejection zone. Look, the burden of proof right now is on the bulls. We are in a bear market. Now, after getting stopped out, I did re-enter a couple positions this morning, nothing real aggressive. I'm not trying to win it all back in one trade. That's a terrible decision. That's how traders get wrecked. I'm scaling based on my structure, and I'm still waiting for a slightly better ETH price before I add more and kind of see what Tau could do because it shot up last night and got stopped out real quick. I just want everyone out there to realize I'm all about transparency and honesty. And right now, my overall directional view still remains bearish. Now, obviously, that hurts me a little bit when these squeezes happen during the bear market, but that's exactly why position size, your stops, your risk management, how you use DeFi to your advantage, all of that matters in this space. And the goal is not to be right every candle. The goal is to survive long enough for the next bigger setup to play. Or you're setting those ranges in your positions wide enough that you are earning yield and not having to worry as much about impermanent loss. So right now, our plan is simple. If Bitcoin rejects at 80K and then we lose 79.6K, I think downside opens back up. That would put 76.6 squarely back in play. And that's probably going to be like an early profit taking point. I think it'd be a really good profit taking point, which is the lower end of the bull market support band. I think even with liquidity positions, where I'm going to kind of look at, do we need to reevaluate and rebalance? Look, if weakness begins to accelerate, I want to be in those shorts. But if Bitcoin reclaims 80.3 and holds it and shows strength above that zone, I have to respect the possibility that this squeeze is not over and we might head up to the mid 80K region. And that is how you have a process. Now, please understand this is still a very patient environment. Shop like this, it's where most people lose. Not because their big picture thesis is always wrong. It's because they tend to overtrade, they get revenge trade. They stop respecting the market itself. They try to control everything, and you can't control everything, but you can pair for everything, whether the price goes up or down. That, my friends, is risk defined. And look, so far, my thesis, it's still intact, but we're going to have to keep a close eye on that pivot point and the rejection point that you see on the chart. And honestly, if you want more real-time updates on how I'm thinking through these Bitcoin levels, trade setups, please consider joining our free Telegram group. Like the video if this helps, subscribe for more Bitcoin, crypto, and DeFi updates. Comment below and let me know, do you think Bitcoin has already rejected at 80K? Or is it going to reclaim and squeeze even higher? And remember, this is educational only, not financial advice. Always manage your own risk. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.